Can you explain a little bit about physiology, since you are somebody who I know personally is into longevity and physiology and how things work in the body and the mind? Are you able to explain the physiology of hunger and how that relates to increasing and intense emotions like anger?
Yeah, what happens for people from a physiological perspective? So, we are either in a fed or a not fed state. And when we're in a fed state, our body sends off certain signals that tell our mind and tell our body that we are fed, we are satiated. When we are in an unfed state, which means I've used up all the active nutrition that I have given myself, and now I am at a baseline state of zero, so I have nothing in my reserves, and then I switch to using reserves that I can pull from my body, I turn into being in an unfed state. And when I'm in an unfed state, my body is seeking food, and it will either find ways to convert things that I already have on my body, or it will start looking around in my kitchen or in the environment or noticing the fast food signs or the smells of food. So there's a whole different hormonal situation that happens for us when we are unfed, where we start to become hungry. And there's a physiological response behind all that that gets a little sciencey, but the bottom line is that when we're in that state, we release different neurohormones and different endorphins than when we are fed. Some of the key players in that would be when I am food seeking, I am releasing a lot of dopamine, which is a I've got to go get food hormone. And I am releasing a lot of serotonin once I get food. So if I feel really hungry, my body is sending off a lot of dopamine. It's also sending off a hunger hormone. And then I am looking around and getting food. And let's say then I find something to eat. Once I have it and I start eating it, my body releases a rush of serotonin, which tells me, I found what I needed.
And so when you're talking about being unfed and the body's reserves being depleted, and then you're in this food seeking mode, is it kind of like when you have to have aggression, like back in the Stone Ages when we had to hunt things and gather things, and there is this sort of intense feeling of aggression that goes on?
Yes, that's a really good way to describe it. And that's where when we talk about the mental emotional state that people get into when they're hungry or hangry, as you said,
Mhm.
what tends to happen is we have this normal physiological response that I'm hungry and I need food. But then we also have an emotional response, which is I need to go find food now. And that combines to make us feel more frantic or more food seeking and can contribute to now having mood hormones get released. Like you said, you can imagine that if in a primitive way, if an animal, and we talk a lot about this, in fact, excessively so, I think sometimes it gets confusing. We talk about this sort of adrenaline cortisol response, the fight or flight, as we often call it now. And what happened, if you imagine, before we live in a day and age where it's just so food access is right around the corner. And initially, when we were developing as a species, we didn't have fast food, we didn't have convenience stores, we didn't even have grocery stores in abundance the way we do now. So we really needed an internal drive to go find water, to go find food for resources to keep ourselves alive. Food at that point was created in a much different sense. So berries were sweet because that was the drive to go find the serotonin, the sugar in the berry to make us feel satiated, to make us feel happy. We like to find nuts because nuts have a lot of fat, and fat is also very satiating. But what has happened now because of our food industry is fat and sugar are so readily abundant in food that I could walk a few blocks from my house right now and find fat and sugar in abundance. So that I don't need to be as driven and food seeking to go find those things. They're very easily accessible and, in fact, abundantly so.
And you work with people who come into your sessions, I assume that they are hungry. I know I do. When I work with eating disorders, I have I have actually experienced people coming in hungry, and I do have some food in my office for that. So when you see a person and they do exhibit some signs of hunger, I guess it would be interesting to share ideas. Just have you tell us a little bit about what you see. I can tell you what I see, but I'm interested because of the nutrition point of view, what you see as a sign of hunger in a person that you're with in a room.
Oh, that's a great question. I notice that people are more irritable. I notice that people have much more trouble focusing. I notice that people don't seem to always track as well the conversation that we might be engaged in. And even to the point of, I notice obviously you or I are talking sometimes about food in a session. And I notice that sometimes the talk of food makes the person describe the desire to go find food afterward. So, talking about food can actually increase that drive and that dopamine response to go and find food right away, which I really encourage people not to judge themselves for. I think that it's very normal to have a response of talking about food, talking about the trouble we have with food often activates our response to go want to find food. So one of the things that I notice with kids, and kids have very quick metabolism, so they're quick to get hungry. They also are often more quick to stop eating when they don't need any more food. So they regulate oftentimes with less emotional eating response than adults do. So they will eat as much as they need and then they will go on with their day. So they are often just at the edge of needing to eat again because they pace themselves throughout a day. So sometimes by the time they come to my office in the afternoon after school during snack time, you can tell that they're having a lot of trouble focusing. They're having a lot of trouble doing the activity that we're doing. And I do notice also that when you get something with a good combination of fat and protein and carbohydrate in their system, they often regulate and come back to sort of being present and being more grounded.
Yeah, I noticed that when they first come in the office, their response to that first question, "Would you like some water?" I also have coffee and tea making abilities. That's what I say when they come in. And their response to that question sometimes is you can tell because their eyes get a little bit bigger, and I could see that nonverbal response where, yeah, I really would like something now. And it's a little bit of a clue to me as far as maybe this person could be hungry.
And with kids, one of the helpful things is using play and using activities. So making play or doing drawings or playing a game. And another thing that helps them to stay focused on what the discussion is at hand is giving them a snack. So sometimes it takes the edge off and it gives them something to do while they're also hanging out with you, which is obviously a strategy that I would not use necessarily with an adult because that
Mm.
goes against the idea of teaching mindful eating and non emotional eating. But for kids, that's a really common strategy that we use.